Welcome. Thanks for joining us on this special broadcast. I'm Padmaja Joshi. It's been a tough last few months in Jammu and Kashmir, especially with the changing environment in the neighborhood. Already with the existing trouble of China and Pakistan, now there is the Taliban takeover of Afghanistan. But more specifically, the phenomenon of an increase in the number of attacks on the civilian population. What are the challenges that this poses to the security forces and how are they being dealt with? Joining us now, exclusively on Times Now, we have GOC of the 15 Corps, Lieutenant General Pandey. Thank you very much, sir, for speaking to Times Now.
Yeah, thank you.
I want to start by asking you, after the abrogation of Article 370, the stone pelting incidents had gone down. The shutdown calls that we were very familiar with every Friday, every now and then, they were done away with. And now suddenly you've got these single gunman shootings. There's a sudden uptick in such incidents. What's the reason behind that, you think?
Okay, let me start saying with a couple of backgrounders, Padmaja. I think having served here multiple tenures in Kashmir, possibly after a long time, a great degree of stability and peace had started emerging. And if you see the violence parameters of just about last 6-7 months, you will find virtually zero levels of protest, street violence, stone pelting events. When you look at the aspect of development issues, you see a lot of development works now getting rolled out and visible on the ground. Look at the aspect of management of COVID-19. Virtually possibly in the entire country, the best managed governance aspect about COVID management was seen in Jammu and Kashmir. We have had a fantastic year for tourism in spite of the COVID fear. In fact, the local tourists, which are the lower end of the and the low budget tourists, has started coming in. There are hardly any hotel rooms available. The cost of airfare had gone up, and all these parameters which were looking up, and people started living their life as anywhere else in the country or in the world. The people who were actually affected were the Nexus, the Pakistani affiliates. They were quite troubled with this changed environment where people started living a life, a normal life of any citizen, which is their requirement, their demand. I think we were anticipating this change. If you have heard me speaking before, we were anticipating that this change possibly will start coming out somewhere in September, October. Not because of what is the geopolitical situation which has emerged, but when an enemy sees peace and prosperity coming back, that is what troubles him most. And therefore, we are actually looking at what is new strategy in terms of disturbing the peace of Kashmir Valley, so that various parameters in terms of tourist arrivals, the workforce arrival in terms of migrant laborers and farming activities, apple farming and such like things will start taking a downturn. Well, there is a new normal which came about in terms of recruitment of thing called hybrid terrorist, which I always say they are quite a dangerous species. They are below the radar youth who are living a normal life as part of their own family. Their mother and parents, their brothers, sisters, family, close friends don't even know that this young man has converted. And now this young man is being mated with a pistol which is very easy to smuggle across, to carry from one place to another, hide in their respective homes, and thereafter, once the target is selected by a very careful mechanism driven from across, one of them is tasked to carry out the neutralizing activity. It is a new law possibly which has come in terms of target selection. What is it? It is not only non-locals. You imagine a teacher, a woman, a principal of a school, a medico, looking after a medical shop, a very prominent face for locals, is identified and carefully selected for neutralizing. There's a process which was put in place, and I'm sure it was basically with a view to carry out, to spread and ensure that the people start understanding that the fear is lurking somewhere around the corner. This also polarizes the entire society because it compels the security forces, especially the police to carry out searches, checks. You know, it may be planned out searches or checks on the nakas, etc. And it inconveniences the population. So that was one of the agenda as well, besides spreading fear, to ensure inconvenience to the normal population, which will thereafter start feeling quite uncomfortable with the civil administration. The third part which I look at it with a careful selection of targets is also to polarize or communalize the entire environment. But let me sum up here to this question, Padmaja, is that the Kashmiri population has possibly understood what's happening. So while there may not have been a very aggressive response in terms of taking this issue back to the enemy, but the fact is that there has been not many events supporting such kind of killings which has happened. And I don't think a common man today in Kashmir supports such dastardly and cowardly acts.
So, sir, how do you deal with this kind of a targeting? Because if you have high value targets, if you have sensitive installations, you can put a security cordon around them. But when a poor Golgappa seller, a school principal like you mentioned, somebody running a pharmacy is going to be shot dead in this fashion, how do you deal with their security?
Yeah, it's a challenge. There is no doubt, Padmaja, it's a challenge because frankly, no security forces in the entire world can put a soldier or a policeman in front of a house to guard any civilian. But there are methods in place. I can assure you there are agencies. Jammu and Kashmir Police has actually revved up the entire mechanism. While every individual may not be protected, but I can assure you there is a joint application of forces in terms of domination of areas, especially where the population in some numbers are staying, housed or working is on. You will see a dip in these killings, while there will be an order such incident which will happen. But I think the larger issue is that the civil society has to rise up to this occasion. If they are the ones who will reach out to ensure the migrant population, the non-local laborers and people from all the various minority groups, to their feelings to be assuaged, assured that they are the ones who will come out and protect, I think the entire police mechanism will be quite well supported by this step. It is happening in some manner. I think the numbers may not be large, but I see a lot of outpouring which are taking place. People are coming out and they are supporting the local, non-locals, the minority population, and they are quite going out and assuring the people that we will be out to help you in case of such an incident happens. But yes, Padmaja, it will be absolutely difficult to assure 100% guarantee to all the civilians who may be belonging to either a minority community or even the Kashmiri Muslims.
It is incumbent on the majority population to make everyone around them, especially the minorities, feel safe. But sir, what about the very basic issue of the violation of human rights? It is very easy to paint the security forces, the police, CRPF, army as occupiers, somebody who is not needed there, not wanted there. But this is a civilian population just there to earn their living. How is the violation of their rights not a bigger issue than is being made out to be?
Yeah, it is a very interesting question, Padmaja. In fact, in last about 2 days, we have conducted a seminar in which not the military personnel but local population came out to speak on the subject of human rights violation perpetuated by the nexus in Kashmir for last about 30 years in various forms. I think we need to talk about it, that why has all the HR organizations kept quiet when on a trumped up charges against security forces, everybody, not only within our country, not only in Kashmir, but on the international forum, reach out and talk about human rights violation where none have occurred. In fact, when post abrogation of Article 370, when for a period of time even the internet was put down, it became a HR issue. While people did not talk of that, while controlling internet, by reducing the control from across the LC, we were able to ensure that mindless violence on the street was controlled, and therefore the number of youth who died, got injured in various street violence due to stone pelting on other issues in 2016, 17, 18, the numbers actually reduced to even count on the fingers. Nobody's talking about it. I think we need to urge not only the human rights organizations but even the media houses to speak about that how the lower end of the spectrum of population here who earns its living by going out daily, either street hawking, driving a taxi, owning a bus, even the basic right of opening a shop so that their daily living can be enabled, were scuttled by all organized protest, bunds and such like things. Street violence in terms of stone pelting was perpetuated through gullible youth of the ages of about 13, 14, 15 years old on the street. In case the police tried to control and some casualty took place, it was talked of as HR violation was taking place. But nobody is holding this nexus, the so-called nexus of terrorists, separatists and the PAK affiliates from across to this, to hold account for what was happening in 2016, 17, 18 and it's not happening anymore from 2019 and 21st in 2021. I think these are issues which we need to talk of. We also need to talk of and speak about the women rights. You imagine there was a young girls band of Prakash which came about in 2012-13 and suddenly they had to shut out because they had an army of trolls who hankered them down to shut shop. Similarly, this so-called trumped up organization called TRF, which we all know is the front of Lashkar-e-Tauba, it is just another name. Issues of fatwa or issues a directive that the girls cannot wear trousers. People have to now reach out. We all know who's orchestrating and calibrating these things. And why not the HR organizations and media houses or even our so-called civil society leadership takes up this case?
Very interesting.
I think what has emerged is there is a segment of population, Padmaja, which is now coming out and speaking out against all this. But yes, if the larger narrative starts up, I think this HR violation which has been perpetuated for the last 30 years in Kashmir will significantly reduce and people will start living without fear in Kashmir.
Very interesting, because what has been happening in Kashmir so far has been shown more as a law and order issue and that of terrorism. But you are saying that one also needs to shine a light on how this goes against the basic fundamental rights of the peace-loving population of Jammu and Kashmir and the peace-loving population that is even visiting Jammu and Kashmir.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, the larger number of population, not only larger, I can assure you 99% of the population in Jammu and Kashmir, particularly in Kashmir, is very, very peaceful. They want to go around their routine, humdrum daily activity. They want to go to offices. Their children want to attend classes, such like things. But when there is an organized calendar of events where enforcement is done to close down, shut shop and such like things, we are basically denying the basic human rights for education, for earning daily livelihood. I think we need to hold all these people who are behind it accountable to it. they may be this side of the LC or on the other side of the LC.
But organizations like the UN, they even had an observers group that was there in Jammu and Kashmir. Why is it that they are not able to observe what is happening to the poorest among society on the streets of Srinagar?
Well, you are taking me to a different level of response to a question, Padmaja. But I think that days of staying here are over. In fact, the way they overlook all these issues, and possibly their reporting is maybe biased, but I don't think they are required anymore here. Whatever is happening in Kashmir is quite visible to local and the foreign tourists who are coming. In fact, today the narrative at the lower end of the spectrum of the population is that they were allowed to actually go out and work for themselves daily. Situation has changed for positive and such like things. So we don't require anybody else to sit here in an office and to give a report. I think everything is available through media, through daily routine activity, which you actually go out to any of the roads, you will find it clogged totally with people going out and doing their normal routine activity of day.
You made a very significant point in the middle when you said that now these lone wolf attacks, as it were, are being made possible because young men, misled men, they are being armed by these overground workers or terrorists. Perhaps even their family is not aware. Is there a worry that local recruitment is going up?
Okay, let me amplify one part. There was a uptick in local recruitment, which started somewhere in 2016. It was in double digits. It went out to rise up to double digits somewhere in 2018-19, and now it has come down to, again, as on date, it stands to below 100. And I am quite sure that we may cross the number of 100 this year, but it not be significant as significant in 2018 and 19. So this number will start going down as the realization in the Kashmiri population, particularly the youth, starts coming up. My main worry is about the white collar terrorists. These are the animals, these are the people who sit in the comfort of their homes. Quite a few of them, by the way, are also in various government service or contractors who are drawing benefits from the government and such like things. They got good houses, their children are studying across in rest of the country, or at times sitting across abroad in foreign countries and having a good education and good life and good business for themselves. Now these people are the ones who actually carry out the task of identifying vulnerable youth. The youth can be drug related vulnerability, it may be glamour, it may be radicalization, it may be isolation through the society, he may be a different child in his family. Now these people carry out this identification, and thereafter, after a careful selection, they influence these minds to carry out activity in name of either freedom or religion or various other methods, even on pay, even on payment basis, to carry out an activity. So therefore I look at it, they identify and thereafter they influence. And once all this activity is done, these are the people also who carry out identification of targets. Please understand, a youth of 15, 16, 17-year-old, 18-year-old does not just go for a random shooting. Somebody needs to tell him. This is also done by these white collar terrorists who go out, identify a very careful list of people who have to be targeted, so that the requisite amount of fear in a select population goes out. And thereafter, they are the ones who match this youth with a weapon. And the system now being a pistol which can be quietly hidden, this youth goes out, kills that identified target, and thereafter melts into the normal routine life of a civilian. So my worry is that these white collar terrorists are the most dangerous than a terrorist itself. I feel they are the factory of the terrorist, because even if we keep on killing local youth, local recruits who pick up a gun, they come out in front of the army or the security force and are neutralized in one way or other. but these white collar terrorists will continue churning out youth which can be radicalized, influenced to pick up guns and kill.
It's interesting you
But
mentioned...
I think the government has started taking some measures on it. Yeah,
It's
they are
interesting you
trying to
mentioned
be,
that, sir, because...
identified.
Because already there are a series of actions against people who are in government jobs, who are, posing as teachers, etc. You think that this is also essential if we want to crack down on the overall terror machinery? Not just the man holding the gun, but the man who is handing him the gun and giving him intel about which civilian target to attack.
Absolutely, you're bang on. This is required to be done, and I think the present government is doing the same thing. Such people are being identified. Firstly, either they are taken out from the government jobs and they are also being put behind the bars. In last few months, I think number of raids have been conducted by NIA itself, and such like people are being removed from the scene, and I am quite sure that such actions will ensure that these white collar terrorists are put behind bars to ensure that a long-term peace and prosperity comes back to Kashmir.
But till such time that happens, do you fear that there could be paranoia? Realistically speaking, among tourists, among the local population, there were reports about how some shops were being shut, the minority population was moving out of the Kashmir Valley. How do you deal with that?
Yeah, you see, this will be always a sine curve which will happen, which has been happening for some time in Kashmir. But yes, what we are very happy about is that this year that sine curve in terms of peace, prosperity and stability has been quite stable. This is a aberration which has happened, and we will try and pull back the entire situation. There's a whole of government approach which is being taken. We'll try and ensure that this paranoia and fear is removed. In fact, what I am told by the police authorities is that certain minority and all which had gone out have also started coming back. But yes, I think we require to continue to ensure that not only the minority population but the majority population also is safety and security of entire population is ensured.
So it's also been a time when we've had bad news, especially for the armed forces. We've lost 10 soldiers in just the last 1 month. What do you think is the reason behind these long drawn operations leading to such casualties being suffered by the Indian Army?
You know, Padma, while this operation has happened in a different in Jammu region, I'll not like to dwell much upon it, but I must highlight, please understand the terrain where those soldiers were operating, and please also understand that we are not like some other countries where we bomb first and thereafter go for operations. We are carrying out operations in our own terrain. We are people who are we are an army which is very professional, law abiding. We will only open fire when the opposite side, we are very sure that he is carrying a weapon. In fact, more often than not, my soldiers, whom I am very proud of, will only open fire when he is fired upon. And that brings about challenges when the operations happen in dense jungles, mountains, in which we are always one step behind. Because while we may have seen a terrorist movement, but we to identify that he is a normal civilian who is held hostage, or he is being taken up by the terrorist into the jungle for certain purpose, we just can't open fire. Killing a civilian, even in an environment of terrorist, surrounded by terrorists, is anathema for us, and therefore we control our fire. So while doing so, there are times we take losses, and I can assure you, such directions don't emanate from top. These directions, these responsibilities, moral obligations are taken on by the soldiers, our young officers, upon by themselves, because they understand that while we may kill 4 terrorists, but even if we kill 1 civilian, possibly we will not be able to sleep well in the night. And that is where the challenge comes. There are events, you please look at the recent incident of Uri, in which while we had about 5 to 6 men who received gunshot wounds, a Pakistani terrorist who had crossed across the line of control, when he puts up his arm, he is still holding this weapon, and he calls out from the boulder, from behind a hide in a boulder, and he says that I want to surrender. That is part of our culture. I think there's a part of our subcontinental culture, our Indian culture, that we don't want to kill a person who wants to surrender, and particularly in case he's unarmed. So these are challenges. We have put on uniform. We have to undergo such sacrifices. But yes, maybe this was an aberration. You look at our this entire year, while we have neutralized nearly about 130 odd terrorists, we have just merely lost 3 brave soldiers. One we lost yesterday. This young man, Sipahi Karanveer, while chasing terrorists, it was in Orchards. He just did not want to open fire till the time he was very sure, and he took the first burst on his head-on before actually opening fire and killing the terrorist. So that is a level of training, that is a level of motivation, that is a level of sacrifice we are willing to give to protect our population, be it in Jammu or in Kashmir.
Interesting that we are speaking on a day when at the time of independence, we had the Pakistani invaders on the 22nd of October. They had entered Kashmir, and what followed after was widespread butchery, violation of the civilian population, and all these decades later, we are seeing again that same pattern where civilians are being targeted.
Yeah, it's a great question actually. It's a great observation, Padmaja. Actually today is the 75 years back when the Pakistanis broke their promise through the standstill agreement to Jammu and Kashmir. And this is the day when the attack on Jammu and Kashmir started by the Pakistani forces, who carried along with them some Qaba'ilis and some raiders. And they started attacking through multiple avenues in entire Jammu and Kashmir. But I must highlight here that while these forces reached Baramulla, their route to Baramulla and to the hinterland was obstructed by brave Kashmiris who gave their lives to protect the routes, which were ingress routes, which are coming onto the Kashmir Valley. Not very many people know, and they also forget, even the Kashmiris forget, that the rape and pillage and loot, what happened at Baramulla, where civilians, in terms of any type of civilians, he may be Muslim, Sikh, Hindu, even Christians, nuns, were raped, brutally killed. A population which was of about 14,000 plus, within a couple of days became a population of about 3,000. Those photographs of burning Baramulla still rankles in mind of anybody who reads history. But yes, they were able to delay this entire process to ensure the landing took place on October 27th, just about 5 days from hence, 75 years back. That first Sikh which came through the Indian Air Force planes and landed at Badgam airport, and the tide turned, and the first defeat of Pakistan Army commenced in 1947-48 on 27th of October from Badgam airfield. We have to ensure, and through your platform, I want to just inform the people that Kashmir has always been a tool, not an end, for our inimical agents across line of control, because they are not comfortable with the idea of India. And if anybody thinks that Kashmir is their objective, I can assure you it is not so. Otherwise, the kind of humiliation, the kinds of human rights violation which have been perpetuated on the Kashmiri population and also of Jammu population in last about 30 years would not have happened.
Absolutely. They might have their designs, they might have that culture, but the idea of India, the Indian people and the Indian army will always stand in the way of inimical forces for being so forthright. And speaking about what really is happening in Kashmir, thank you very much, Lieutenant General D.P. Pandey.